Animation is in a weird place right now. Despite massive backlash that studios are facing, we're still seeing many projects that are being cancelled, scrapped, and written off. The biggest example still ongoing is the drama surrounding Coyote vs. Acme, a live-action hybrid Looney Tunes movie starring Rile E. Coyote. Despite many names and even animation insiders speaking out about wanting the project to be released and not be written off for tax benefits, WB seems to show no interest in a release and has failed to speak out about it, more than likely because they don't feel obligated to do so, that the subject is too inconsequential to comment on. Which, considering WB is as big as they are, and that decisions like this are becoming more and more of a trend, it's not surprising, to be frank. Animation and the art these studios are putting out in general are becoming more and more throwaway. Sure, there are still some gems hidden among them, but some studios still just see these as something to fill time slots. Despite this, we still see a lot of situations of bad takes either defending studios for the wrong reasons, or shifting the blame somewhere else. I've mentioned before on the channel that I'm not really one to call out individuals, but for the topic, it's hard to get past. I'll preface this by saying that I don't condone anyone attacking anyone for opinions or takes, but some light ribbing seems appropriate. You need to expect it on Twitter. Anyway, artist Nic Parris, who has worked on several shows like Teen Titans Go and Trolls The Beat Goes On, and even has a book out about animation, and another one in the works about how to pitch for animation, recently had a short comic highlighting the frustration some feel about their favorite animations being cancelled. "Oh man, my favorite cartoon got cancelled." Yeah, it sucks. So many talented, hard-working people come together to create something to entertain people all over the world just to get cancelled. At least you did all you could by watching it legally, buying merch and other things to support the show. Right? The real punchline to the comic would be a fifth panel where the complainer turns into a pirate. "We're not the problem, rock!" Nick would elaborate he believes the reason shows get cancelled is because fans are not watching them and instead of downloading the shows illegally, and that those views and downloads are in the millions these days. Getting past how Nick apparently trolls pirating sites to check the download rate of animation, pirating is an important preservation tool for animation in this day and age. Even getting past the frequency in which shows are added and removed from the countless streaming services nowadays, some shows never get a chance to be seen without pirating. Despite being featured on the Checkered Pass block, it is not possible to stream Cow and Chicken or Dexter's Laboratory at the moment, not to mention other cartoon classics that help build the network like Johnny Bravo, Foster's, and Time Squad. Heck, even though it's featured on Max's banner for the Cartoon Network Hub, codenamed Kids Next Door is not streaming on the platform as of the time of this writing. Fan favorite show Final Space is a great example of how pirating is good for preservation. After being cancelled in its third season, the show has been almost impossible to fully support or even watch without pirating. The Blu-ray is out of print, and that was only the first 2 seasons, and looking to buy digitally presents its own problems. On Amazon Video, only the second season is available to purchase, and on YouTube, only 4 episodes of season 3 are, and they're not even connected. Even the creator of the show had to rely on a Twitter account that had saved and shared various shows no longer available to stream, since his request to get copies of his own show from the studio fell on deaf ears. Streaming may seem like the future, or did a few years ago, but with the constant shift in libraries, names, mergers, and so on, it really doesn't seem viable in the long run, which brings us to our next point. Something else mentioned in the comic was that fans have a responsibility to support the show by buying merch and DVDs, a point that is immediately torpedoed in response from OKKO creator Ian Jones-Quartey. Ian elaborated that he begged for the network to merchandise the show, a point he has raised in the past, and to make DVDs/Blu-rays of the show so fans could support it, something he's still fighting for to this day. OKKO in particular is a show that seems tailor-made for merch, with a wide cast of characters and even a built-in trading card element in the form of PAL cards, an in-universe trading card series that highlights different heroes and their stats. It was pointed out in the response that OKKO characters would fit perfectly if they were converted into small figures like the Muscle line, inspired by the Kinnikuman anime. OKKO did a video game which I personally played and enjoyed, one of the few games I've completed 100%, but it was not enough for the show not to be canceled and rushed to an ending. Of course, some shows can't escape this fate. Ian's partner, Rebecca Sugar, found big success in merch with Steven Universe. It getting plushes, a few of which I own, Funko Pop tie-ins, art books, soundtracks, and even physical releases of the series and movie, although just on DVD. Adventure Time was also lucky in this regard with many of the same things. But this is an exception rather than the rule. For every show that gets merch and even home video releases, there are countless shows that don't. Regular Show still doesn't have a complete series released in America, with only 3 seasons and the movie getting them. Mao Mao was supposedly renewed for a new season, but it never came to be. And that show didn't get any merch or DVDs to let fans support the show. Even popular shows on Cartoon Network don't get merch or DVDs, only getting at least 1 volume on DVD, Gumball the same, and many others. Cartoon Network seemed like they were trying to rectify this with a recent initiative to release some shows on DVD, like Ed, Edd n Eddy and Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. But even these releases are plagued with laziness, as the Ed set does not include the holiday specials or the finale movie, which still has no plans for physical release. And this is not just a problem with Cartoon Network. Nick and Disney also have the same problems with marketing their animations, with some exceptions. Gravity Falls, for instance, while not getting any real merch, did get some books produced for the show, including a real-life version of the journal from the show, and a collection of comics tying into it. And of course, this spectacular Blu-ray set produced by Shout Factory even has a new book coming out soon this year about the show's villain, Bill, which is marketed as being for older readers. But other shows are not so lucky, with Owl House and Amphibia still not receiving any merch or home video releases, although an art book seems to be in the works for Amphibia, which, if it does well, could mean a lot more. And as for Nick, unless your name's SpongeBob, don't expect any merch or DVDs. Glitch Text was a big example of a show that seemed tailor-made for merch. It was so mistreated, it even had to resort to a clip show episode. The point is, it's all well and good to ask fans to support a show they love, but if studios don't give the fans the means to support the show, that falls on the studio, not the fans. It's no surprise that a lot of studios are far beyond in a lot of trends, still gauging the success of shows based on the severely outdated Nielsen rating system and flawed readings of stream numbers. Not to mention that animation is still not a well-respected medium in any way, even in this day and age. Which is one of the reasons creators need to invest in themselves more. I mentioned VisiPop in a previous video, but they are the prime example of this. Having 2 shows, one independent and one studio-backed, they make sure to release a good amount of merch to keep fans going, just wrapping up a Valentine's Day themed drop. Even Has-Been Hotel got a big set of merch to start before the show even aired, like t-shirts, keychains, pins, and trading cards. Merch and physical media can be a key moneymaker for animation. Just look at Japan. Just browse the anime goods section at Amazon Japan, and you'll see merch of all kinds with the latest anime, even anime that is long over, many of which sells out very quickly. And of course, the physical media, which is tailored to collectors and hardcore fans. So while it is expensive, it also has an insane level of quality that can only usually be matched by boutique Blu-ray makers in the West. Western studios seem to be under the impression, in a lot of ways, that animation is a throwaway medium, something that they can fill time, not so much else. Sometimes it seems like they're even ashamed when something gets too popular. Disney, for example, still does make animation, but also pushes live-action remakes as more legit versions of these stories. And a recent example would be the Avatar: The Last Airbender Netflix series, the creators of which wanting to make it seem more serious retelling of the story, seemingly ashamed of its roots. But what can be done about this? I've talked a lot about these bad takes and the bad state of affairs, but what can be done about it? Well, in my opinion, one step would be to be more vocal. While many are already vocal in many ways, it helps to demand more of studios and even help for creators to take the side of creators. It's easy to speak out on the release of Coyote vs. Acme, but being even more vocal on the issues that plague the industry every day needs to be talked about more. Lack of merch, lack of support, lack of revenue stream and promotion. Not that I'm asking for any creators to be harassed for what they are and are not doing, or that they're not doing enough, because it's also easy for me to speak as someone who's got nothing to lose. But real change will never happen if risks are not taken. These risks also include creators investing in themselves. While the allure of getting your show picked up and produced by a powerhouse like Disney or Cartoon Network, we have a long history of instances where shows are not treated well. Of course, I won't begrudge any creator who wants to work in this system, because it's a big opportunity and has the chance to lead to something even better. And if you feel like the project can break through, or lead to something greater, more power to you. I wish only the best for you, but I also hope that you won't regret it when your work and talent is written off and not allowed to be shown again. But again, this is all coming from some nobody nerd with no experience, no connections, no talent, and no place to talk. This is just coming from a fan who hates to see work mistreated and wants more from the industry. Whoa, geez, I was just about done with this video, but right as I was finishing the response, the man himself not only doubled down on the points he was making, but trying to deflect the criticism he was getting. First, we get the standard tact of portraying those calling him out for his horrible take as simply raging, making them seem as though they're just hating irrationally. He next goes to break down the structure of the comic, as if people just don't understand it and didn't get the joke. He mentions that while he did focus on pirating as a way people fail to support the show, he also made sure to highlight doing other things to support the show, as if that somehow was a catch-all term. What he fails to address and seems to want to avoid addressing is the main point people were criticizing him for. It wasn't just about piracy, although it was brought up, it was also about supporting in other ways thing. Many responses reminded him that many shows don't get merch, don't get DVDs or home video in which to support, and his response to that was just, well, the studios don't need to put out merch if they don't want to. Yes, a lot of this response comes from a place of a man who seems to be on the edge of being part of this corporate animation scene and desperately wants to be part of it. As mentioned before, he's writing a book about pitching a show to studios, and makes sure to point out that once you sell a show, it's not yours anymore. While this is true, of course, people are criticizing how poorly studios are treating these shows that they've bought, producing them as simple filler and throwing them away without giving fans any opportunity to properly show support for it, which would benefit both these studios and the creators. But because studios only care about their bottom line and have an easy way to avoid taking chances on new revenue streams in the form of tax write-offs, they have no motivation to change, especially when creators like this are more than willing to feed studios projects like this and expect seemingly nothing in return but the initial paycheck. Now, I'm not saying that all of these shows in the system should be ignored. We have had opportunities to see many gems come out even today. But with this trend continuing to happen, and more young creators wanting to work with big studios to get their shows made by any means, they need to understand that this is how it's going to be unless something changes, be it with a creator-run studio or just more indie projects. Sure, this may mean more projects that don't get made in any form, and other projects that won't get as big a budget or reach that you may with a real studio. But it will also mean more control over the project, more opportunities for support, and including merch. Of course, I'm not one to talk at all. I'm not a creator of any kind, and though I have written a few scripts, none of them have gone anywhere because I have no real talent, no experience, no connections, or anything really. I'm a nobody. And the fact Nic has worked with these studios in actual projects in the past makes him better than me. But these observations that I'm making come from being a fan of these types of things for years, and just seeing the state things are in and wanting them to be different. Not just so I can say fuck the studios, but because I want all these projects to succeed and I want all these creators to be fulfilled, both creatively and financially. And yes, I want to own more plushes and home videos from these series. What Nic is doing here comes off as corporate bootlicking. And while that is a harsh term and it's not one I want to use lightly, the fact is he's making excuses for studios tanking shows so they can get a tax write-off to keep other non-animation things above water, and it comes off as scummy. It is true, it is a business, but it's a bad business for a lot of reasons. And it acts like this is the only way to go about things, that relying on tax write-offs and riding trends is the only option, when that's just not the case. This isn't even a eat the rich thing. It's long been a trope in animation that studio execs are idiots who don't exactly get the creative process, going back to these trending clips from The Simpsons.
Exactly.
Oh, you know, attitude! The sunglasses!
Can we put him in more of a hip-hop context?
Forget context. He's gotta be a surfer. Give me a nice schmear of surfer.
I feel we should Rostify him by 10% or so.
It has been shown a lot of times that when creatives are given license to try things and experiment and have that freedom, great things can happen. Just look at the heyday of Cartoon Network and the rise of cartoons, and even the start of Adult Swim. But as studios and projects get bigger and start making more and more money, money men and executives start to take over to try to improve what's not broken. And when it eventually fails, it's never their fault. Nic also shows that he really wants to be in with the in crowd by addressing other creators. Not by name, of course, but you can tell who he meant. Addressing first the creator of Final Space, where he had to pirate the third season of his own show because the studio would not provide it to him. Which Nic says it sucks, but since it's not his show anymore, he's not entitled to it. And of course the creator of OKKO, Ian Jones-Quartey, who he says he would have loved to buy figures of his show, completely missing the point and frustration Ian felt not being able to merchandise his show, and being told that if more fans just bought the non-existent merch, his show may not have been cancelled. Nic would later wrap up his point by saying the point of the comic was he was using his own experience to inform his take, saying that he's worked on a few shows and series where ratings and views did in fact play a factor in keeping it going. But of course, this brings up a larger point. He seems to put the blame on a show he had personally worked on not getting views as an issue with piracy or something similar. Of course, we don't know what show he's talking about that may have gotten this fate. This is also something we have to think about in the fact that just because the show had low ratings and views, that doesn't necessarily mean that the show was pirated. Instead, it could just mean that no one watched it. Once again, I can't say if this is actually the case because he never mentions a show or a team of any kind. And of course, one can never be sure how many views are lost to piracy. Even if you troll every single torrent website and find your show, you can't be sure that each download means a view lost. If anything, it comes off as a bias in saying, well, my show didn't fail because of me, it must have been those dang pirates. Again, I don't want to accuse anyone of anything, but this is just how it comes off by the doubling down. Bottom line, I hope all of Nic's projects get all the success, and hope that he gets everything that he wants out of this. But putting the blame on things that he can't prove, like pirating, buying bootleg merchandise, and so on, just comes off as wanting to make excuses for a studio's bad behavior, or possibly your own failure. I hope his show gets picked up and is treated better than his peers and his idols, and that he never has to go through a situation where all of his hard work is written off, so his boss's boss's boss can get a little more in his paycheck. Well, let's face it, it's probably not going to happen. He had a bad take. He made it worse by not actually learning from the critique he was getting, even from actual professionals. He still has time to learn a lot more and grow from the situation, but maybe put off releasing the book where you give other creators advice for just a bit. But I want to know what you all think. Am I full of crap? Can the fans do more? Or is it just how things are and we all just have to live with it? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and be sure to like and sub for more videos to come. Until then, I'm the One Nerd, and I hope your dream project gets all the success you could ever hope for.